Hello everyone, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I'm Anna Walker, otherwise known as FELTit, and I'm coming to you today with an art lesson with Anna. Usually you see me working with felt and fiber, and today I'm going to show you a little bit about how I use felting to add on to things. But we are going to create a sock bunny today, and here's our little example friend, and I'm going to show you a different way to do the face with needle felting. But I've been crafting all my life, and like I said, usually you see me crafting with things like this. This is wool fiber from the sheep. It's been washed and processed, and I'm going to use it a little bit for my packing material, but we are going to get started. We need just a few simple things. You've had your list for the past week. We need I'm just going to turn the camera down so I can show you. We're going to need an old sock. We're going to need a couple of rubber bands. The only ones I had were these super thick ones, and while they worked, I'm going to show you how I'm using this really thin elastic string instead. We're going to need some ribbon, or maybe it's trim that we've got that we can use, just something to tie the bow on our bunny. We're going to need a Sharpie, and we're going to need some scissors, and we'll need some rice to get started and to fill our bunny with. Now, I am also going to be using my wool fiber here to help with the bunny. That way I don't have to use quite so much rice, but you guys probably don't have this. However, if you wanted to use less rice, the rice helps weight down the bunny so that he sits up. If you wanted to use less rice, you could take some old yarn, or you could take some fabric strips, or maybe you've got some of those t-shirt strings from an earlier project left over, and you could use that for the stuffing. You could even use things like polyester fiberfill if mom or dad have that on hand to do part of the stuffing. You could use papers even inside of this to do the extra stuffing, although I really like to use something soft, and I have some of this it's not the best fiber, but it's perfect for stuffing things. So let's get started, and I'll show you how I use this, but I'm also going to show you using the rice as well. So the first thing we need to do, I'm going to move our bunny fellow out of the way. I'm going to move our scissors out of the way, our Sharpie out of the way, and our ribbons out of the way. Right now we need our sock, and we need the rice, and we need the rubber bands or the elastic. Now, I'm using a pretty long sock, so I've got a lot of room up here. So what I did to make it a little shorter and make it so that I didn't have to worry about the heel of the sock, I turned it inside out. This also helps give us a nice base. And I found where the heel was, and that's where I tied an overhand knot. Remember, this is wrong side out, okay? So I'm tying this overhand knot right where the heel is, and now I'm going to turn it back around to right side out, and I've got that knot inside that'll help stuff it. Now, for this part, you might need to use a funnel, or you might need another set of hands to hold your sock open a little bit wider. I'm going to see how much of a mess I can get into by just wrapping this around my measuring cup that has my rice in it, and I'm just going to pour in some rice. About, I don't know, 1/2 to 2/3 of a cup. And I think I went a little over there, but that's okay. So you see how when we put the rice in it, it makes it just nice and solid down there at the base? That's what we're going for. So just add enough rice so that you can get a nice kind of bean-baggy kind of thought. Now, speaking of beans, you could use dried beans instead of rice if you have those on hand. I didn't have any on hand, so I'm using the rice. Now, my bunny belly, I think, is pretty good here. So what I'm going to do is just sort of stretch and squeeze all of that rice down. It's got a nice solid base here. And now I'm going to take, this is where you would use your rubber band to go around and then twist and around and twist and around until the rubber band is used up. The reason I'm not using this thick one is because it makes the head pretty floppy because there's a big space for the neck there. And so I've decided I'm going to use this elastic string that I have. And what I'm going to do is bring it together so that I've got two lengths of it, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to tie a knot, just going to do an overhand knot right on the end. Remember, we just wrap it around our finger and then we push those ends through and we pull it tight. See? And so we've got our knot right there. And so it's like a mini rubber band here. Now I am going to go ahead and trim off these tails, but I'm going to leave, see how I'm leaving just a little bit of the tail on there. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this that you would be doing with your rubber band. I just want to push this down really, really well. I want to get it as tight down to the body as I can. And that's pretty good. And so now I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm wrapping it around the top part of the sock because it's the easiest thing to be able to get through and get around. And I'm just twisting each time and then pulling it through again and twisting and pulling it through, and I'll keep going until it's nice and tight. I think one more and we'll be tight enough. Let's see, can I get another one in there? Oh, I don't know if I can, but I'm gonna try. Let's try. All right. Oh, and I just broke it, so I'm gonna grab it before it stops, and I'm gonna tie my knot again. I pulled too tight. If you pull too tight on your rubber band, it might do the same thing to you. But the nice thing is that even though we've got the rubber band here, if it breaks, if we're really quick to tie a knot in it, and then we can get our ribbon and we can tie that over right away. Now I'm using about a yard of ribbon that I've got here, and I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to fold it in half. Whoops, I lost it. Fold it in half again, maybe. Here we go. Got my ends, folding in half, matching the ends up, and folding in half again. The reason I'm doing this is because I like to have really fluffy bows. I'm cutting where the folds are, and now I'm going to take and wrap this around where we just had our rubber band. We're just going to cover up the rubber band. So we're going to tie a bow. Just tie a knot tight. That will hold it. Even if our rubber band breaks, now that we've got our ribbon here holding it in place, it's not going to go anywhere. Now, if you can't tie a bow, don't worry about it. Just tie a knot there. But I can tie a bow, so I'm going to pull this out, and you can adjust your bow if you hold it in the very center and it won't pull through all the way. And then I like to just fluff these edges up so that they get a really nice fluffy bow. It's just a fun fluffy bow, okay? Now, for the head, you can use rice once again to make the head. I am choosing to use fiber for the head so that it won't have too much weight and knock it over, and that'll make it possible for me to stuff an awful lot of fiber in here. If you have an old yarn ball, you can use that. If you've got scraps of fabric, you can use that. But I just want to shove a lot of fiber down here to make our bunny head. And I'm going to get another little handful. And I'm just shoving it down into the sock so it's nice and tight. And now I'm going to take and I am going to push the head down as much as I can, pull up the excess, okay? So I've got this about as tight as I can get it. And I'm going to tie an overhand knot in the sock. I know this is tricky, but you can do it. You could use another rubber band here if you wanted to. But since I have a long sock, I can just tie an overhand knot right there. And so now I have my bunny head, and I've got what I'm going to create my bunny ears with. Okay? So we've got a nice tight knot here. It's a top knot. I'm going to fiddle with it until it's got my loose pieces where I want them to be so that I can do the ears now. To do the ears, all we need to do, let me get some of my trash and scraps out of the way. All we need to do is find the middle point of our ears, and we're going to use our scissors and cut right down the middle. We're not going to go all the way to the knot, but we're going to go pretty close. And we might have to come back here and then just start snipping. So you see I got pretty close there. Now we have our two ears, and all we need to do is shape them a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is take my scissors and go from here and just sort of cut those see how I cut the edges off at an angle so it looks like a bunny ear? I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And we're just going to cut it up at a nice arch, and we have our bunny ears. And so we've got our floppy bunny all ready to go, except our bunny needs face. So we could, like I did on this one, take our Sharpie marker and draw in our eyes. I just did 2 ovals for the eyes. And then I drew a smile on. And that could be our bunny face. Now you could add whiskers, you could add eyelashes, you can make your bunny face whatever you want it to be. And that could be our bunny face. And that is our bunny face on this one. But I wanted to show you guys, since I talk about my felting a lot, I wanted to show you guys what I do, one of the things that I do with felting. And so I'm going to needle felt on the face of this bunny. And so to do that, I have a little bit of white fiber here. This is a different kind of wool fiber, but it's another kind of wool fiber. This one's from a brighter white sheep. I've got a little bit of blue so we can color the eyes. I have a tiny little bit of red for the mouth and 2 little drops of black to use for the pupils in the eyes. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the whites of the eyes on here. And I've got more fiber than what I need, but I want to just pull it apart and make sure the fibers are nice and open. And you see how thin and how fluffy that is? I'm going to split it into 2 pieces, and each one I'm going to just sort of roll into a flat, sort of round, ovally shape. Doesn't have to be too terribly tight. I'm just rolling it to get the shape started so that I don't have it all super duper fluffy. And it's still loosening up a lot, so I'm going to compress it down just a little bit more. If we leave too much air in the fiber, then it makes it tough for us to get that fiber to compress down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my needle felting needles. And I don't know if you can see as I turn it there, the bottom part, the bottom edge of this needle has barbs on it. It's a very sharp needle, so if you use needle felting, you want to be very careful. Always know where your non-stabbing hand is. But there are barbs, little notches on each of the 3 or 4 sides of this needle. And as those barbs go in, I'm just going to park my needle right here. As those barbs go in, they pull the fibers closer and closer together until they make felt. And so that's what we're going to do right here on our bunny face. And I'm just doing a light little pouncing here. I'm doing it upside down, so you'll have to forgive me if it doesn't turn out perfect. and this is probably more fiber than what I need, but I wanted you to be able to see what I was doing. And you see, as I stab that needle into the sock and into the fiber, how that fiber comes in closer and closer together. It's exactly what I was talking about. That is called felting, and that's one way of being able to do felting. It's called needle felting or dry felting. And so our bunny's going to have some big eyes here. But as I stab the needle through the fiber and into the sock, the fibers come closer and closer and closer together until they make that eye shape that we're looking for. And you can learn all about the felting that I do, and if we find a little piece of something that doesn't belong, we can pick it out. You can find all about the felting that I do at my website, which is called stabthingsintoexistence.com. And there are videos that I have on YouTube that show you some more felting that I do. But I'm just going all the way around the fibers, and I want to make sure that I get them compressed pretty evenly all the way around. And then go over the top of them, and I'm just getting a nice rounded dome for the one eye, okay? And then I'm going to start working on the other eye. I'm going to take the other piece of white fiber that I have, and I'm going to twist it up into a nice oval, compressing it as much as I can. Now, I know that you guys probably don't have needle felting tools at home, and I understand, but I wanted to show you what I do. This is my job, is doing felting. And I've talked about it a lot, so I wanted to show you in case you didn't know what felting was. And so now I'm just going to do the same thing for this eye that I did for the first eye. He's going to have some big eyes. I say he, but I suppose it could be a she. Maybe the first one that I made is a he and this one is a she. You tell me. But I'm going all the way around, trying to make sure that those fibers get nice and felted in. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the first one that I did to try and match that. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, sometimes it's fun to have one eye a little bit larger than the other. I have a friend who makes these creatures called ho-hos, and one eye is always much bigger than the other, and they are adorable. I love the ho-hos she makes. And we're just going in on all the sides, making sure that we've got these fibers nicely felted in. The cool thing is that since I used fibers inside the head, these fibers that I'm putting on the top are tangling up with the fibers underneath so that the eyes aren't going to come away from the sock, because the sock's trapped in between those two sets of fibers and it's not going to go anywhere. This isn't going to hurt the sock. It's not going to make holes in it. Socks are usually made of a knitted material of some sort. And so the nice thing about needle felting is that the needles usually go through the holes that are always already there, and they make it possible for you to use that knitted fabric as an in-between piece, especially if you have fiber underneath and fiber on top. And so you're working to make sure that you've got good connections of the fiber to the fiber. Let me take a look. Those are pretty even. Those aren't bad at all. I think I did okay. I'm going to just flatten this out a little bit. Okay, so we've got our eyes on there. Before I do the rest of the eyes, I'm going to go ahead and put the mouth on here. And I'm just going to take this little piece of red and I'm going to make it into a smile. I'm just going to do some little stabs here at the beginning to make sure that it's nice and anchored in. Can you see that there? And then I'm going to bring the smile over, and I'm just going to give our bunny a nice happy face. And this will go a little easier because it's not quite as much fiber that we're trying to get in as what the eyes were. Get the bow out of the way so you can see. Now, needle felting is something, wet felting too, but needle felting especially, is something that kids can do. I have a young friend named Caleb who I was able to teach how to needle felt several years ago. And a couple years after I taught him how to needle felt, he entered a competition, a fine arts competition at his grammar school, and he won Best in Show for his needle felted chickadee display that he needle felted all on his own. All right, so I have the blue here, and I'm going to open it up. To open it up, we just pull it apart, make sure that it's nice and fluffy. And so we've got that nice and fluffy, and now we're going to look at it, and we're going to split it up into two pretty even bits of fiber. This one needs just a tiny bit more. Not that much. There we go. All right, now the same thing for the iris of the eye. The iris is the colored part of the eye. We have the white of the eye, and then we have the colored part, and then the pupil, what helps us see, is actually the black part. So I'm going to put the blue on right here, and I'm going to start just tacking it in place with some shallow pounces here. And then I can start working it all the way in, and you can see that I'm just working very shallowly. I'm not trying to connect it to the fiber that's inside the sock. I'm just trying to connect it really well to this white fiber outside the sock. And so I'm coming in every once in a while with a couple of stabs just to make sure that it's staying where I want it to stay. And then I can go all the way around. And I know it seems like this must hurt the bunny, but you know what? He's glad to be able to see. And work it from all the way around. If you see any spots that aren't coming together, you just make sure that that's the next place that you poke. Okay, there's one. Now let's do the other one. And I'm going to wrap this up nice and tight in that nice circle. And then I'm going to put it down on the other eye. And I'm just going to tack it down a little bit first, just to make sure that it stays there. Go around the edges. Got one side that's not quite hooked in yet, and we're just going to work it all the way around. This is a fun way to add embellishments to a lot of different things. It's also a fun way to create creatures on your own. Okay, I'm looking at them from this way. I think they look pretty good. One's a little larger than the other, but that's okay. Now I'm going to take my black and just right in the center. Even though this is a square, it will circle up really quickly. I'm just going to focus my pokes right in the very center, and that will pull the fibers in to where it makes it more rounded. And then I go all the way around again to make sure that everything is poked in. And now we'll do the other side. I'm just poking right in the very center. And you see how it's pulling the fibers in closer and closer? That's what felting does. And now I'm going all the way around. And there we go. We have created a needle felted face for our sock bunny here. And we're all done for the day. If you don't have the needle felting stuff, I get it. You can go to my website and you can order a kit, but you can also just draw on your happy face with the Sharpie marker. So it's totally up to you how you want to decorate. You could have mom or dad help you sew buttons on for the eyes. If you've got beads at home, you could sew beads on. But sewing is a skill that, takes a little bit more than the, half an hour that we have each day. But I wanted to show you a couple of different ways to make the bunnies. I'm so glad that you came here today. I hope you have a wonderful time creating your own sock bunny. Next week's supplies will be up on the page later today. We are going to need some things to keep in mind over the weekend. We're going to need some toilet paper tubes or some paper towel tubes, and we're going to need some egg cartons or some plastic Easter eggs. So your choice on those. If you use plastic Easter eggs, you might need a little bit of help making holes in the middle of them from your parent or grandparent or auntie or uncle or whoever's staying with you. But those are two things that you really need to have on hand for next week, and the rest of the supplies will be on the web page, on the Facebook page, and just as soon as I can get home. So from the bunnies and me, happy Easter, and I'll see you next week.